Saturday, one of the Lord's most glorious days in the week. We come to you with a special episode of Rules for Retrogrades. I think this is one for your recreative enjoyment, given the topic. It's on the question of stay-at-home fathers, which is downstream of all the cultural change we're undergoing as we strike down the new ancien regime of feminism and move back toward patriarchy. A movement which began by my watch sometime about 4 years ago. I think it's this month, 4 years ago, when I announced the case for patriarchy on Pints with Aquinas. So that's a proper Saturday show. It's a proper episode for today because Pints with Aquinas recently had a short clip go up a day and a half ago, and it was entitled, "Are Stay-at-Home Dads Awesome?" And we're saying no.
We're saying no.
They're not. No. Steph is with me today because we're going to explain why. It's not complex, but we'll also say, because it's on point, the reason we've been doing a lot of Saturday shows is because we're getting so behind from helping to create patriarchal households with Return. That is www.retvrn.us. We're making matches on the weekly, and so that's kicking the show schedule behind. But I think it's neat to do a Saturday show. It's a response show. I sincerely hate doing response shows without having on a foreign guest. I mean, Steph is foreign enough, but she's
half foreign.
Yeah, no. I mean, without someone on the channel that we're addressing, and we're addressing the Pints with Aquinas crew, I guess most specifically the producer of that show, who's called Thursday. I don't know if that's a real or a stage name. We're going to get to that in a second, but I really wanted to bring Thursday. Always Matt. Matt's always welcome on the show.
You invited both of them, right?
I don't think I invited Matt this time, but you know, it's been hard. It's been hard getting in touch with Matt over the last year and a half, but definitely Thursday, because he said the stuff that I think is the most problematic. We're going to play that in a second, but I do hate, and would you just vouch for me? You know I hate this. Sincerely.
Yeah.
I hate doing shows about people or even topics that stem from some other influencer. For those shows, I would love it because I'm the most direct guy in the world if I could bring them on. But it's been hard within Catholicism, even right of center, to get people to come on to shows lately. And it's not just my show. It's not just that I'm the odd man out. This is something all of us are talking about behind the scenes. Why are we not going on each other's shows more?
Yeah, it's strange. I feel like you always extend the invitations, and it's very rare that the invitation actually gets accepted. So it's disappointing because, you know, you wanted, I think, to do the show with Thursday from Matt Frad, just to talk directly to the source. But did you even get a response? I don't even know if you got
I didn't. So there was something between Pine Sap and Thursday on Twitter. There's something between those two guys, like, and I kind of jumped in. I felt like a busybody. But I was like, look, man, I care about this topic too. They had reconciliation. They were squabbling about some other thing. It's Catholics, so they're always squabbling.
It's Catholic Twitter. It's a dumpster fire at all times.
So, it's like, then I tried to send, I guess it's Thursday, a DM real quick right after that, in order to invite him on the show, and I never heard. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna wring my hands over it, but it's because
a polite no would be. I mean, it's still a bit rude not to even just like respond at all.
I don't
care.
That's
say, no, thank you.
That's woman stuff. I don't. I think in both senses. I don't really care either way. It's just what I do care about is this could be a much more cool echo chamber. YouTube. Yeah. It's a really cool concept. You don't have to fly out every time.
Right.
If we would appear on each other's shows, not only, get this, when I agree with Nolan Knows or Robillard or Elliot Holz.
Specifically when you disagree.
When you disagree. That's when we get the no's.
Because I think that's why Catholic Twitter is such a dysfunctional mess, is because people don't know how really to disagree. It's funny because our family, the way we work is when we disagree, it's like we're having fun conversations. There's lots of jokes. It's very lighthearted. I think people tend to get very defensive over their point of view, and they don't really know how to deal with the discomfort, I guess, of somebody having an alternative point of view, which is why we have Catholic Twitter, which is just rage tweeting all the time.
Yeah, it's rage addressing folks all the time. And
Right.
but hey, you and I, we get along capital.
Yeah.
We do rarely fight, but I certainly, every once in a while, the arguments are less than perfectly cordial, and I understand not wanting to have one of those on YouTube. Your once a year spousal big fights or something, like, you don't want to telecast that on YouTube. But we should end with this cautionary word, except for the proposition that it can be really positive.
Yeah.
When people come on, Pine Sap came on, and we were talking about the Pope, and I think he does more what I would call Pope-splaining than maybe Matt Frad does. I'm not sure. I'm not trying to start a new squabble with him. But this is very important. When you have two guys that are very comfortable being politically incorrect, I said this to him, that aren't just trying as the fundamental goal to not piss anyone off, it's easier for us to talk to each other. It's easier for me to talk to Pine Sap, even if I agree with them about Pope Francis less than Matt Frad, because I know that if the metric marker is always what's this going to do for views, what is this going to be popular with everyone, then we're not going to, even if we disagree this much on Pope Francis, because Matt and I are pretty close on our views of Pope Francis, then it'll be taken as a big umbrage by him, and he's like, I can't do that because it'll be too unpopular. Whereas I disagreed a little bit more with Pine Sap, but that guy and I just have a more similar approach to what the purpose of podcasting is for. It's not to agree all the time. It's not to get mad when you disagree.
Well, I've always appreciated about you the ability to do that. I think, you've had on, obviously, Pat Coffin with his views are different from yours as far as like who is Pope. Pine Sap being on recently. Just behind the scenes, you've done this a lot where people, I guess, have come out and said some things about you, and you've been very cordial, and you've actually made friends out of those situations, which is something I've always admired about you. It's funny how things originally when they're originally contentious, have turned into like really good friendships with some guys, even on Catholic Twitter. So
even on Ortho Twitter, Jay Dyer.
Jay Dyer, yeah, that's
he used
a good.
to do yelling screeds about me, and I said some rude things in DMs behind the scenes, and it's like, because we become friends. I remember this comes from basketball. I remember in 12th grade basketball, we picked up a player that I used to get in a fight with and thrown out every time we would play them in summer rec league. And then my coach went and recruited that guy. This guy's name was Matt. And so we were the 1 and 2 guards on the team, and we were a killer combo. And men are able to do something women aren't. We really like each other after that. And that's how it is with Jay Dyer. And obviously, we're not even the same religion, even if it's the religion that I respect them. The point is, it just, if people have a similar view of dialogue itself and of podcasting itself and what the real goal is, it's not to please everyone, it's to get at truth. Do I'd say Pine Sap does or Jay Dyer does, then it's easier to disagree about bigger things. On the other hand, if you agree about more stuff than not with someone who has a fundamentally different view of, well, YouTube is there to grow the channel, then even small disagreements, like, I might have had with Taylor or Matt, they become huge in the eyes of, I guess, Taylor and Matt, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I wish we could go on each other's shows whenever we disagree, because it makes for more interesting programming, and the dialogic method, dialectics, is central to Western philosophy.
Right. Well, I think it's what we're noticing is just a general feminization of society, that we're not able to just in general do that. That the art of disagreement, or even just like cordial debate, even if it gets a little bit hot sometimes, it's just, it's the feminization of society that people are just, they're shying away from those conversations, unfortunately.
It's sad. But enough hand-wringing over that. Like, I really wanted any of these people to come on. So it became a 3-part convo. And it was between Matt, his guest at the time was Noel Mering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Thursday, who I guess is his producer. Let's jump into it. I'll play it in 3 clips. The main speaking part for Matt, the main speaking part for Noel Mering, the main speaking part for Thursday. We'll take each one at a time, if that's good with you.
Yeah, can I just say that I think overall the topic stay-at-home dads, it's really gross to me. It's the it just eradicates the uniqueness of women. Basically, the whole thing is just like women. You know what? They're replaceable. You know, dudes can do what women do. And we see that all over the place. Bud Light just learned that lesson the hard way. Men can't do what women do, and they can't be awesome at it either. But go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm trying to think of the way to address this, because there are 3 speaking parts here. There are 3. Well, I think you've only heard this like half a time or once.
I haven't heard really any of this.
Okay,
yeah,
so there are 3 different, like, legitimately distinguishable points of view that are represented by Matt and then Noel Mering and then Thursday. And this is why it's important to take them in turn.
Okay.
Because of the fact that you and I have started this thing, the patriarchy revival online, that swung so far back to the right. I don't think anyone who's well advised about views, PR, viewer response, anyone at all would want to, who has a right of center audience, would want to be run foul of what we're saying in the coarse way that you're addressing. Like, Matt does what I'd call a good job saying, like, no, in ordinary circumstances, this isn't what we're putting forward here.
Which is funny to me, like, why we talk about these situations. Like, if in ordinary circumstances, a woman should be taking care of the household, it's like, why are we spending so much time on these bizarre, like, fringe situations to diminish the role of women in the home? Okay, so
this is, I think, at issue here. The title of the video is "Stay-at-Home Dads Are Awesome!" ! It wasn't posed in the interrogative. So what you have here is what I'm going to call paradigmatic reticence. The paradigm is shifting back to patriarchy, the true Christian teaching. And at 3 different levels, what you're going to see in this video, Matt, Noel, Thursday, is differing levels of paradigmatic reticence to let that shift back happen, even though Matt at least is a conservative. I don't know about the other 2. Noel Mering is really a moderate feminist. We'll get to that in her speaking part. We'll talk a little bit about Noel. But even though he's Matt's right of center, he has some paradigmatic reticence to let the healthy, good, salubrious shift back to the right happen. And that's often done through exceptionalism, like what you have here. A guy in the audience, I'm going to assume it was a real guy, not a plant, but plants are often used, not that it was here. A guy in the audience said, "Hey, I'm a stay-at-home dad. What do you say to me? Aren't I awesome?"
That's a woman's tactic, always to look for the exception to the rule. Oh, I like to be at home with my husband. What if he's an abuser? Like, it's always that tactic is very feminine, or not feminine, because that's not the ideal. It's effeminate in the worst possible ways, to always take something that is good and try to take it down a peg or 2 by bringing up these fringe, offbeat examples to diminish something that you already are uncomfortable with.
Yes, exactly. In the law, we say exception makes bad law. It's really admirable how law professors in the law classroom deal with this. And I mean leftists, centrists, rightists are all like, don't look, everyone who steps in a 1L, law school classroom is totally a neophyte. And so a lot of people bring their modernist biases, where the main modernist bias you do is try to make the exception the law, like we're talking about here.
Right.
Right-wingers sometimes do it too. It's mainly a lefty game. And even the leftist law profs don't want to hear it. Even they're like, look, no, that's BS. We're throwing that out. Exception makes bad law. Law is about, as Oliver Wendell Holmes said, attempting to reify natural kinds, even if they're just distinctions of degree or something like that. So that's how we're going to proceed. Exception makes bad law. We're going for the bulk here.
Right.
And it is an effeminate tactic to take a call from a guy that's like, well, aren't I awesome? My wife, something horrible happened to her, and so she can't be home. I don't know why she would have to work because something horrible. Maybe it's that something horrible happened to the guy. I think that's the more common.
I mean, everybody understands if your wife died, you have to pick up, but that's not an ideal situation. It's not an awesome situation, and the man will never be able to replace the mother.
Nor is having
in any capacity. He can do the best he can do, but he's not going to be awesome, and it's certainly not an ideal situation or something that people should be opting for outside of a humongous tragedy in the family.
As a mother of a kid in a wheelchair,
yeah,
how would you feel? How would anybody in a wheelchair feel, for that matter, if someone said wheelchairs are awesome?
Yeah.
Yes, it's like they're not. They're
Right.
not. How would you
People
feel
would
that?
say that stuff to us all the time because our daughter is in a wheelchair, and I think they're trying to be kindly, but they would say like, "Oh, she could do just as everything everybody else can do," and you and I would be like, "She can't, but she brings holiness to our family through her disability."
Yeah.
But we have to acknowledge what that is. It is a disability. It's not. People are just uncomfortable, I think, addressing things on the surface.
Honestly.
Honestly.
People have a hard time with honesty
a
now.
father staying home and taking care of the kids while the mother is off working is that is a tragedy for the family. That is not in any capacity a good thing.
It might be the best of all possible worlds ex post someone gets cancer or someone has their legs chopped off.
You're making do, but the mother can never be replaced.
Making do is not awesome. And that's what, talk to any parent of a kid in a wheelchair. Talk to any person in a wheelchair. Wheelchairs are awesome. This is a totally awesome situation. They're like, dude, no, it's not. It's like Michael Scott talking to the building supervisor. It's like, you could go just as fast as everyone else. Like, no, I can't.
Like,
it's
stop
a challenge. It
patronizing
sucks.
me.
Yeah, that's not true. That's not what being the parent of a handicapped person is like. That's not what being a handicapped person is like, I imagine. It's like, no, it's a messed up situation. We're making it as good as we can, making the best of it, to use your word.
To make the best out of it.
So,
instead of just making up, down, just acknowledge things the way they are.
Which is why this title, right off the bat, I'm going to play you the first clip, is gender dysphoric.
Yep.
Deeply.
Yep.
It's confounded and confounding. Yeah. And at the very best, a little more charitable than those two, it's confusing and misapplied.
And it diminishes the role of women. Far be it from me to sound like a feminist, because I'm not. I'd rather die. But it does actually diminish the uniqueness of what a woman does around the house. It is not replaceable. A man can't just come in and do that any more than a man can just say, hey, bam, I can now have babies. It's not, you can't interchange it.
Or any more than a woman can go into the workplace and do a good job at a man's job. They can't do that. That's why HR departments sprang up. That's why cost of living sprang up. That's
women's happiness declined exponentially.
Women's happiness declined. That's exactly right. Okay, so we'll play the first clip. I'll throw some shouts out, and then we'll give commentary on the first clip.
I'm so blind. He says, can Noel and Matt comment on stay-at-home dads like myself? I stepped into this role due to my wife's health issues. I often feel discouraged. I'm sure other men do too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that can be done well and beautifully. I think it's probably harder because it's there's more present challenges, I think, to switching those roles up. But I think one thing that we have as Catholics that's different than Protestants is that when we talk about male-female roles, we often are talking about it more in a more deeply a deeper way. So I think it's not so much about roles and relegation. I think, like my husband, when we first got...
It's not about rules and relegation. I'll pause there. This isn't Noel's whole speaking part. There are a few things I want to say about this. But first, you've heard the topic prepped, and now I'd like to tell you that if you are into patriarchal households, particularly if you're a man into patriarchal households, our matchmaking service is going so well. I mean, it's become like a full-time job. It's www.return.us, and we have paired some amazing couples. We're going to start getting testimonials shortly. People are flying all over the country to see each other, and we've matched them within an already pre-matched set of categories that's relatively rarefied.
Right.
These are retrogrades, most of them. So they already know they like most of the people in here, or all of the people in here. They just need the temperamental best match. It's been really effective. We're going to have a bunch of marriages, that's my prediction, within 15 months. It's www.retrn.us. We need more men. All the smack talkers online said you're just going to have a sausage fest. And it's been anything but. We have so many women, and we need some more men, even though we have
women who understand their
lots of men.
roles, which that clip. When did all this, like the Catholic feminists, man, they are out in full force against everything that is good, true, and holy, aren't they?
Well, of course. If you're out against...
They have such a hard time just with basic facts that women should know their place.
Right.
It is just fighting tooth and nail to pervert a holy patriarchal system at every turn.
Yeah, and that's what you have here is a little background on Noel Mering. This is a moderate feminist who has been reading the tea leaves. I mean, this is all in IMO. This is a moderate feminist who's read the tea leaves over the last few years. It will not do to be a right of center kind of first wave feminist Catholic any longer. We're going to talk about the history of what's gone over the last 4 years with the patriarchy revival. It really kind of began on Matt's show with me going into the studio, doing the first show I ever did with him. It was in early August of 2019. And it really created quite the talk. And I ended up doing a debate a few months after that with Trent Horn on feminism, sort of based on that appearance on Pints with Aquinas. I announced on Pints with Aquinas then that I was writing this book, which became The Case for Patriarchy, after a long tortured history of just getting it out because of so much torture.
A hellish landscape of events that was happening.
Well, how much shrapnel did I have in my front side, proverbially speaking, just to get that book out? Started there on Pints with Aquinas. Shortly after that, you got signed by another Catholic book company to write the female companion piece to Ask Your Husband, to Case for Patriarchy. And I would say, if anyone out there has any doubt as to what we're saying, that we've shifted the Overton window right, and this has caused moderate kind of first waiver type feminists like Noel Mering or Abigail Favale, or I would even throw Carrie Gress in there. Really,
they're not
really
fully
moderate
on
feminists.
the anti-fem. I'm sorry. I
They're not on
I give
the
that
train.
honorific very carefully, the anti-feminist, and you have to, at the bare minimum, believe what the church teaches about the husband is the head in all things, as Christ is to the church, and the non-working and all of this, like the dad staying home.
Submission.
Yes,
Submission.
just straight submission. I do not give that honorific lightly, and I don't give it to those women. I'm sorry, I don't.
Sure. And anyone out there, I would just, because we're going to go back to Noel's speaking part here on stay-at-home dads, and we're going to analyze some of the language she uses, which will betray what I'm saying it will, I think. You'll see in a second. Ask her. These are all public Catholics. Noel Mering, Abigail Favale, Carrie Gress, who's publishing a new book on the topic. They can't publish enough on it. They're just trying to keep up with Case for Patriarchy and Ask Your Husband. Go ask them what they think about Case for Patriarchy, and especially about Ask Your Husband. I'm not going to say it here, but ask them. email them. What do you think about Ask Your Husband? That is the score to beat.
I would love
for
to hear them
Catholic
publicly
anti-feminism.
say. I would love to hear them publicly.
Yeah,
say that.
well, Abigail Favale already talked about it. She's been on Matt Frad's show a bunch of times. I think Gress has too. I think Noel Mering now has too. And you're going to hear words in this presentation, her brief presentation here, like harder to switch those roles up. These are ontological roles.
It's
That's
impossible.
like saying it's harder to switch your sex. No, harder to switch your roles up. She's going to say things like, when we talk about roles and relegation, that's a feminist term, well, we talk about it in a deeper way than Protestants. And she means like Calvinists who actually take the Bible seriously. She's going to say we really can be gender dysphoric. So listen to what she says here, okay?
More present challenges, I think, to switching those roles up.
Let me go back a little.
Present challenges, I think, to switching those roles up. But I think one thing that we have as Catholics that's different than Protestants is that when we talk about male-female roles, we often are talking about it more in a more deeply a deeper way. So I think it's not so much about roles and relegation. I think, like my husband, when we first got married, he is a far better cook, and he cooks most of the meals even to this day. And I can be a can-do person about home improvement. So I'll like hardwire a light fixture.
So cool.
But I didn't feel like I was doing that. That meant that I was manly, or that meant that he was feminine. It just, we hold those roles in a deeper way. So I think that you can probably do it very well. And I would never say that there should never be a stay-at-home father. Sometimes circumstances just demand that.
Yeah,
of your
I
life.
would say what you're doing.
Okay, so that's the end of her part. First off, let's do this. I'll set the template right now. There's a trick here, and it's the same trick that the guy who wrote the question to Pints with Aquinas used. He said, right off the bat, he goes, I do X. Why don't you comment on whether or not X is
my
good?
Face.
Comment on my face.
Comment about my face to my face.
Yeah, am I hot?
I dare you.
It's like, okay, no one wants to do that. So he used that feminist trick. Noel Mering uses that trick also. She's like, well, let me tell you, in what's supposed to be a theologically proper answer, she just says, well, I do it. My husband and I switch roles in the home. I'll bite on the trick. I'm not going to comment on your home. Types like the moderate feminists have done this to us in their opposition to patriarchy and true Christianity, and I'm not going to do it back. But she did I will point out, she did the exact same thing he did. She led with, we gender swap in the home, and guess what?
Cook.
Because I do it. Yeah, because I don't like cooking.
Well, she said I'm a bad cook. It's like, well, just learn. See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Learn how to be a good cook. You can't just say, okay, I'm bad. Hey, listen, I'm bad at this. Just learn to be better.
that in general, yeah, that's the thing. But that is not in abstracto saying, here's what's proper and well ordered, therefore I do it. That's reversing things. The way the feminists do, the way the guy who wrote the question did, the way Noel did. That's saying, I do it this way, so I'm going to reverse what's good and proper.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And that's why she's using words like harder to switch up sex roles. It's not harder to switch up. It's impossible. She's saying things, she's discussing this entire topic using feminist language. She's a moderate feminist. Again, go ask her what she thinks of Steph's book. I won't tell you, and I'm not certain, with absolute certainty, I know, though I can't really say more. Ask her. A moderate feminist will always use terms like roles, which insinuates that sex expression is a function of nomos, human convention, not phusis, nature. Roles. It's not a role. That's like saying, me and my buddy, a black guy, got together and, we were watching the ball game and he played the role of a black guy and I played the role of a white guy. You'd be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Well, guess what? Pius XII says that the ontology of sex is much, much deeper, more deeply rooted, and more important than the ontology of ethnicity. He doesn't say the ontology of ethnicity is reduced to nothing. He says it's something, but it's worlds less important, Pius XII, than sex expression. So sex expression is absolutely real. It's not hard to get around. It's impossible to get around.
Yeah, and I think I would have just said to that person that wrote that question, I would say, because she did mention, she's like, well, some circumstances demand that a man is at home with the children.
Of course.
Yeah, like rare ones, like the woman's really unwell. There's like a widow situation, something of that sort. I would just say, obviously, that's not ideal. You're doing the best that you can do. Everyone understands and is sympathetic to that. But let's not fool ourselves into saying that this could be done beautifully and that you can make up for the woman. I've known women who have lost their husbands, that are functioning without a man in the home, and as hard as they can try to fill that role, they're never going to be able to fill that role. Everyone's sympathetic to that situation, but let's not get too hasty here. Well, we're starting to tell people that are in those unfortunate sympathetic situations that actually you can do just as good as a mom can do. That diminishes the role of the mother, and it blurs the lines and makes it very akin to
feminism.
Not feminism even, but just like the transgender movement, where everybody can just be whatever they decide. As long as you try hard enough, or you get enough surgeries, or you're interested in certain things, then you can be that thing. That is absolutely not the case.
It's a great point.
But yes, obviously, I understand her point. We can be sympathetic to that, but I think they go too far. They went way too far in trying to give that guy too much by saying,
I mean, well, you said it there. But look, it's an exceptional circumstance. Abby, our daughter, needs a wheelchair. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean wheelchair and wheelchair requiring situations are awesome. Wheelchair situations
are difficult.
Suck. They're hard. They gave me that. I lost tons of hair. Started going gray. Actually became a hypochondriac
because
of
a lot of medical
situations.
issues from being in a wheelchair. And again, we're sympathetic to that people who have that situation. But we do the best that we can. We don't make up down in an effect to kind of, I guess,
make ourselves feel better, to console ourselves.
Somebody feel better.
And when one continues to employ the rhetoric of exceptionalism in place of rule talk, then it is paradigmatic reticence, where you're reticent to let the regime shift the way it is. Now, Matt is, I'd say, the least reticent. Mm-hmm. Matt is I was defending him on Twitter, where people were really going after them for this clip, because it's a bad clip. It is bad, but I was like, I'm not just saying Matt's a nice guy. Matt is a very kind guy. Mm-hmm. Kind is more important than nice. Okay, yeah. I do like the guy, and I wouldn't just say that. But he has a different approach to YouTube, to growing the channel, right? To challenging the powers that be, challenging popular lies.
Well, letting the Catholic feminists run amok on your channel, as nice as of a guy I think he is, I think that's a major problem. They're not being challenged enough at all. These women, their ideas fall apart immediately, and they're not being challenged.
But hear what he says, though, having said that.
Okay.
I mean, as someone who has a wife with a lot...
Very well, and I would never say that there should never be a stay-at-home father. Sometimes circumstances just demand that.
Yeah, and I would say what you're doing, I mean, as someone who has a wife with a lot of health issues, it sounds like you're stepping into a role that's quite sacrificial.
Yeah.
It might not be something you would choose, but it's something that's been chosen for you, something that's been placed upon you in a similar way to a woman who's infertile. It's not something she would choose, but a woman can bear that cross more or less heroically. And it's a
great analogy. Love it. Would you say infertility is awesome? No, you wouldn't. So I'm connecting the dots.
You just do the best you can, like what we said earlier.
You do the best in a shitty situation. That's life.
You
Jefferson said the art of life is avoiding suffering where you can.
And you don't opt for it. You don't opt for infertility. You shouldn't be opting for a man to be at home with the children, and the wife should be out.
What do you opt for? Awesome situations. No one opts for a wheelchair, infertility, or if they're sane, a stay-at-home dad. Listen to what else Matt says. It's pretty good. I'm going to address Matt in a second.
Difficult thing. I'm not comparing your staying at home with a woman being infertile. It's a different cross, obviously. But bless you. I don't know. I think and it's got to be hard too if this fella's watching a lot of videos that are really pushing back hard against the left narrative that men and women are interchangeable, right? And so they often speak in ways that if you're at home, you must be a beta male or something like this. I just wouldn't listen to that.
Can I ask a related question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's where it gets Let me see what the time sig is. That's where it gets a little funny. Let me introduce you to what I think the truth is here in the situation. You tell me what you think. Matt's perspective is generally, I think, really fair in this clip, and I obviously I don't just say that. I always have something to critique. Stay-at-home fathers are boundary conditions. They comprise exceptions to the rule. Matt did, contrary to what he later characterized, he did make the comparison to infertility, which is a great one. No one would opt for it. No one should opt for it. It's not awesome to be infertile. It's not awesome to have a stay-at-home father. It's sinful to choose to have a stay-at-home father. The Bible is very clear on that. We'll read your favorite passage in all of Scripture, the book of Sirach.
It's sinful to choose for infertility.
It would be sinful to choose for infertility. Generally speaking, my main bugaboo with goodly Matt Frad is it's like the 90s sitcom reset phenomenon. On 90s sitcoms, The Simpsons always used to poke fun at it. Something would happen at the end of one episode. Grandpa Simpson would move in. And then the next episode, you're like, cool, where's the continuity? And he's just back at Springfield Nursing Home. Or the Simpsons get a dog, a second dog or something like that, aside from Santa's Little Helper. And then in the beginning of the next episode, they're back to just having one dog, Santa's Little Helper. It's a famous trope for 90s sitcoms. It's very odd that they didn't see the need, the writers of 90s sitcoms, to at least struggle, sometimes in vain because you don't see little discontinuities happen, but at least with major plot points to connect them.
Right.
And bear with me here. It's a zero-sum obsession. You're always back to the center at the beginning of each show when you watch Pints with Aquinas, aren't you? There's never any, hey, I learned this, because Matt is a truly open-minded guy. Hey, I learned this, and I'm going to stick with it. And then I begin where I was at the end of last episode of the Pints with Aquinas show or 90s sitcoms. It's a zero-sum obsession. And I would say that I think this stems from the template for his show. Again, I don't watch his show. I don't watch Joe Rogan's show, but I've been told many times.
We get clips all the time.
Yeah, we get clips sent over because they're always talking about you and me and our marriage and our books and the way our books affect our marriage and the way our marriage affects our books and the blah, blah.
Feminists that are on the channel always do too.
His template is Joe Rogan, which makes zero sense to me because Matt's a smart guy and a reasonably holy guy and a good guy that I think should be a template for Joe Rogan, not the other way around. But he uses this stoner, atheist, moron, Joe Rogan, as the template for his show, which makes zero sense for a Catholic, simply because Joe Rogan has the biggest, or now he might have been pushed to one of the biggest podcasts in the world. That is not a good reason to idolize someone. And I think everything that I'm saying about Matt, or about Pints with Aquinas, or about even what he said here, is downstream of that. So Matt, or Joe, let's talk about Joe Rogan. He'll have on a brilliant Christian scientist, a pro-lifer, classical theist philosopher, not the guy on Twitter, but any classical theist philosopher, and he'll be like, I can't argue with that. That's pretty cool, dude. Like as he's like toking his joint or whatever. Cool, dude. And then for the next episode, he'll have on, Black Science Man, a black atheist science man, and he'll be like, cool, man, and he goes there, and he's chasing it down. He's always back to center, just like the 90s sitcom reset phenomenon, you see? So it informs a kind of militant centrism, and it's very, very hard to watch if you know what you're looking for and you know the way the ideas should play. I know the way the ideas should play. I'm a trained philosopher. I'm looking for growth, and I just don't see it a lot. So remember, in context, I want to get your point of view on what Matt said here, but this patriarchy revival online veritably began with no false humility, but no false pride either, on Pints with Aquinas in August of 2019, 4 years ago, when I announced that I was writing, at the time I was co-authoring, the book which became The Case for Patriarchy to Matt. And we talked about my experience. Feminism's everywhere. It's in the water. All you do is you hear screeching women screeching at their husbands. I had just come from Disney World the day before. I talked about that. And that set Matt's faithful Catholic, but normie faithful Catholic audience on edge. Set their teeth on edge. And a lot of them liked it, but a lot of them didn't. And that made Matt very, very uncomfortable and affected the way that we, who had been friendly to that point, would regard each other over the next year, and just made him very nervous. Because that's not how he runs the show. His model for the show is Joe Rogan. You grow it at all costs. That's not the model for how I run the show here.
I don't know. Why can't and I'm not even advocating for myself here. I would love to just see any woman who has the proper views of the patriarchy and Christian submissiveness on Pints with Aquinas. Why is it always these feminists running amok there? I would love to see somebody. I'd love to see Rachel Wilson is a great person to have on. Mrs. Homemaker. Like, there are other people that could be on there actually giving women the proper view of how they should be wives and mothers, instead of these women who are clearly very confused and
moderate feminists.
I would say outright feminists, but
yeah.
Just always with the feminists, and everybody knows like bullcrap when they hear it. It's clearly bullcrap. Like the things that this woman was saying on the podcast, it's just like, oh, I don't like to cook, or I'm not good cook. Everyone's like, well, just get better. Like, you're a wife. Like, spend time doing that. Spend time learning to be a better wife. That's the problem in society in general, is that, not even speaking to her because I don't know her personally, but in general, what I'm seeing is crap wives everywhere just saying, I'm just a crap wife. I can't, that's just who I am. That's just, you got to accept me. I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. Just deal with it. It's like, instead of just get better, up your game, ladies. It's not an excuse to just say, hey, I don't care to do things. I don't like to do things, or I don't know how to do things. Learn, put some effort in it.
Yeah, it's still the mark of the strongly residual feminism, which has been with us for about 100 years. It's going away slowly, and that's a victory from us. It's a victory that it concerns Pints with Aquinas. Matt, at least the first 3 years over the last 4 really kind of pushed back on me and some on you from behind the scenes, I think. And the last year, once some of our mutuals, our friends over at Daily Wire, both Matt and I have decent friends at Daily Wire, started picking it up. Jason Whitlock started picking it up. Freedom Tunes started picking it up.
All the secular people, like all like the bimbos on TikTok about like
secular bimbos.
Yeah, that are dressing up like Marilyn Monroe and stuff. It's like
that's
wow.
the last year. And once that happened over the last year, now Matt has changed. But his attitude hasn't changed toward, wow, this theoretically began on my show. And, the reason he's not proud of it, which anyone who has a mic and a social platform would be proud of, hey, this began on my show, or I got the first interview with so-and-so, or I'm the one that broke this story. The only reason he wasn't was because he so adamantly stood guard for the ancien regime of feminism and stood guard for 3 years. So now he's like, oh, well, he did admit that you convinced him of certain points. He didn't admit that I did. My book came out first, and I'm the one with the mic.
Well, and I would have liked just like a behind the scenes like acknowledge. I don't even need, people were writing us and they're like, oh, he mentioned you on their show. It's like, listen, we were friends beforehand, and we were in communication fairly frequently before like all the feminism stuff happened. And we were trying to convince him, Matt, on the patriarchy stuff, and sent like the books, and we're like kind of sending texts and stuff back and forth. If it's true, and I appreciate him saying that, I would have preferred that to be like a private thing, like him just like kind of reaching out and being like, hey, I know we haven't spoken in a while. I've reconsidered some of the things that you've said, and,
right.
and it's true. I appreciate that. The public thing was nice, but again, it's like you have our numbers, like, and we have reached out to you many times about this particular topic, and I am being mentioned quite a bit on the show. Like, it is strange to be spoken about so much, and your ideas being spoken out about so much, and not even to get an invitation. But I mean, it's his show. He can run it how he wants to. I find the whole thing kind of uncomfortable, but that's fine.
Well, because you're not a public person, but you don't have to be shy about. Okay, you had I think the feminist Abigail Favale did like a very public screechy. I'm not going to get myself in trouble here. I had some more adjectives lined up. Reading of your book. that was just desperate.
That was fun though.
And it was fun times. She went on Pints with Aquinas, I think within a month of that. Your book came out. It created quite the set of ripples. This is, again, 7 months after mine came out. It didn't create quite the ripples that we expected. Mine was more before it came out. We had some real hardships. Some people recall some of those. They were semi-public. And then yours was after it came out. Pints with Aquinas was a home for types like Abigail Favale. I would say, I think Noel Mering, Favale, and Gress are kind of in the same set there of hesitant, reluctant, reforming feminists that are going because they thought they could be somewhere in the center or maybe a little right of center in Catholicism because it's so deeply feminist, or has been for so long. They thought they want to stay a little bit with the curve, and so they're having to go slowly, reluctantly rightward. But feminists still they are, and
well, they're feminists on all the issues that matter, right?
Right.
It's fine to say, look at these crazy broads in the street wearing these ridiculous hats. Everyone knows they're idiots.
Yeah.
And like, you don't make yourself an anti-feminist by pointing at the freak weirdo women that are like parading down the street topless and screaming about vulgarities. Like, everyone agrees about that.
Yeah.
You make yourself an anti-feminist by, okay, how do you treat your husband? What is your view on who's the boss of your household? Are you working? That's how you make yourself an anti-feminist. Like, everyone's an anti-feminist, I guess, by those standards.
That's a great point. And also, of course, 2014, 2015, let's just call them the astroturfs, the astroturf-styled feminists, had to make some sort of response because first-wave gender dysphoria was being consumed whole by third-wave gender dysphoria. That's all I'll say. And the astroturfs didn't like it. I think these three moderate feminists in question, the Catholic feminists we've named here, are more like sort of reformed, halfway reformed astroturfs, TERFs, that are like, okay, we have nowhere left to go. We're already trying to publish books and stand in academic offices and occupy positions of social authority and public intellectualism in America. So we kind of have to have somewhere to go. So like a lot of the further to the left astroturfs, they're just kind of looking for a niche, trying to fill in, the lowest point, the way water does.
Well, truly anti-feminism material and anti-feminist material in books, they can't find a home. Like they can't have a corporate sponsor.
Right.
Rachel Wilson, I think she's self-published, right? The Occult Roots of Feminism. There's some great anti-feminism literature out there that you have to do just independently because it cannot survive.
And another one that we, Doug Wilson's daughter, who I also think might be named Rachel. I might just be imagining. If so, then there are two great Rachel Wilsons out there. Now, she is a Calvinist. Remember, Noel Mering says, we have this better view of gender roles than the Protestants. That's actually not true. If you're talking modern Catholics versus modern Calvinists.
Right.
She has a great book. And then Rachel Wilson, Occult Feminism, is an amazing book. We need to have her on this show. But yeah, again, that one's a reasonably well-known Protestant, one's a reasonably well-known Orthodox, but in the Catholic space, you are sui generis, and there is no corporate niche for it. You just said it correctly.
Right.
But we have to address this a bit. Folks really need to go out and ask Carrie Gress, Noel Mering, Abigail Favale. I mean, email them. Ask them in the public comments. What do you think of Ask Your Husband? Why don't you talk about it?
Well,
what do you
Abigail
think
Favale
about
did.
wifely submission? What do you think about women needing to occupy the home and be silent? What do you think about the marital debt? What do you think about women voting? These are the real issues. I don't need someone publishing another book saying the politics of dysphoria are bad. We already know they're bad because
Yeah.
they're so self-evidently bad. They think they're bad because they're destroying the WNBA or female fighters.
Or like,
I'm happy that the WNBA and female MMA fighters are being destroyed. So that's actually a silver lining in the cloud of in the dysphoric
that
cloud.
all of that really is. And I just kind of laughed to myself because all of these like new anti-feminist books, it's like just like watching a TikTok of a woman behaving badly and somebody just going, "Oh my gosh, guys, did you see that?" Like that's all it is. It's just like pointing to the most obnoxious thing that everybody agrees on, versions of feminism, instead of really attacking the root of the problem, which is that we have a society full of terrible, crappy wives that really need to up their game across the board.
Instead of making excuses for why they won't up their game, like you kept saying.
Yeah.
Just become a good cook. It's an
learn,
interesting.
learn.
Last winter, you were like, the girls are wanting me to bake more. I know how to bake some, but I'm going to bake trickier dishes, whatever they're
Right.
called, confection. And you started. It's one of the greatest things about a great woman like yourself.
Thank you.
You're always like, oh, the kids want me to do this more. I'm going to do it. My husband wants me to do it more. I'm going to do it. That's really important.
I
Okay,
am so
let's-
bad at so many things, and I had to teach myself from the ground up how to do just basic woman stuff. If I can do it, then
But then you're
can
quite
do
good
it.
at them now
Yeah.
because you can learn. Let's listen to Matt.
Listen to that. I think that's
Can I ask a related question?
Okay, here's Thursday.
So I was talking to a friend of ours the other day, Matt, about this topic, and he pointed out, and this is really interesting, and I'd never heard this point before, that for the majority of Catholic history in like the peasant era, like the Christendom era, both the man and the woman stayed at home actually, and
just wrong.
they
Flat out
did
wrong.
the work together, right? Like they were working on land in the home together, working
Right.
on the home together. And the differentiation between men should go out and women should stay at home is actually an artificial one in of itself.
It's wrong.
And so I think I'm wondering if we need to be more careful as Catholics when we're talking about who should stay at home, that what we need to be doing is being more forward, that what we're actually trying to achieve is a family which is building a home together in different roles, because for the majority of Christian history, it was both of them at home doing it together.
yeah, or a short
Reindustrialization.
walk distance.
Yeah.
So it's like to say that the men should be going off to the office and the woman should be staying at home is not to be trad enough, you're saying.
Well, not even that, but like when we talk about it, we talk about it as if like forever, like men went out and women stayed in the home and stayed in the kitchen. But
They did.
what did that look like? Was something more like what your friend and my new friend John Henry does, right? Like where he homesteads, right? Where like he's out
Yeah.
doing the killing and the farming, and she's in the home on the other end of that. They're working. They're doing the same work at different points. And I think a lot of the women stay at home pairs it as if it's two different works. But I think that's where we get mixed up is we need to start realizing that it's the same work being done on different levels and different ways.
Okay, I've been waiting for a spot where I can pause this because I'm having to keep refining the same part in my Luddites way of adducing clips since you're not on the other side of the screen. Thursday's point is flatly inaccurate. Did you know that? He is addressing, hold on, let me back up a second. This is what Dr. Ed Fazer is complaining about with the modern Catholic YouTuber mania, where there's three people in the room that are supposed to be reasonably intelligent. One guy makes a bold distinction. It's a false distinction. I'll substantiate that in a moment. Thursday makes a bold distinction, and then no one challenges it. Everyone goes, oh, right. Matt goes, oh, the trads aren't being trad enough. The traddiest thing is for men to be home with women, which is the essence of Thursday's point. It's utterly wrong. So in scholarly circles, you go, no, that's not right. I in addition to having degrees in history and literature, philosophy and history and literature and law, I've studied history on the side, particularly European history, the first millennium, early second millennium, and this is flatly wrong. So everyone's just nodding and kind of building to his wrong point as he's like a guide that takes you further down the wrong path. Thursday, this is what I would have told you, buddy, if you were on the show. That's just not right. Perhaps you've heard of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, right? A late 1300s High Middle English story written that it's not even technically the same language because that's how old it's older than modern English. That's how old it is. Well before the Industrial Revolution. You're getting a lot of these points from Patrick Deneen, I think, and they're all wrong. You said that essentially everyone before the Industrial Revolution was a yeoman farmer. That's not true. Small yeoman farmers were a very small niche of the socioeconomic makeup of Europe in the early second Christian millennium or the late first Christian millennium. It's just not true. Have you ever heard of the Miller's Tale? What about the Cook's Tale, the Reeve's Tale, the Summoner's Tale, the Squire, Physician, Franklin, Clerk, Merchant, Shipman? Shipman, do they do that from home? The Pardoner, the Manciple, the Man of Law? The yeoman is one of, and this is like half of the different tales in Canterbury Tales. 1300s, baby. Yeoman farmers were a very small part of society. Now, even if we were to ignore all that, and which you shouldn't, because most men left for the day or for the week and would come home at the night. Yeah, or the shipman would come home for the year. But or a lot of them would come home for the weekend because they'd have to travel 15 miles or something by road, and you can't come back every day. You'd have to go into town if you're the partner. You couldn't come back every day. You'd come back on the weekends. Right. The man would leave the home and would go do his job as a physician or a lawyer, a barrister, a lawman, a sheriff, pardoner, reeve, cook, summoner. They were not cooking, doing all this outside. Only the yeoman was. Okay? So you're just flat out embarrassingly wrong. It's fine.
And again, it's like
we're wrong sometimes, but
what we were talking about was like the female tactic of taking like what is again a niche. Okay, talk about men stayed at home, farmers, guys. Like okay, farmers. Well, let's talk about farmers in these situations. I would ask these guys: have you read scripture? We, by the way, have a 38-page free Catholic versus Feminism document on timothyjgordon.com that has all the scriptures. And it's not just telling women be near the vicinity of the home. We're talking about the tasks that involved the home. The Bible is not telling men that they have to do any of that stuff. The division of labor and roles in the Bible, specifically the Old Testament, are very specific. They're very, very, very specific. So to have this point of view that men were in the home and they were also doing feminine type things as well with the wife is absolutely incorrect. The people in the Old Testament, when they're talking about women's roles, the women are being told to be the cooks and to tend to the kids and to be around the house. The men are never being told to do any of that stuff.
Never. Yeah, without exception.
Without exception.
Even if we reduce... We contract the horizon,
right?
The entire landscape of all the possible medieval pre-industrial jobs that Thursday's talking about here, and we reduce them all, and we wrongly assumed, as he does, that the small yeoman farmer who has his own land, a little bit of it, and he just works it with his family, which is true. If they were all the jobs, his point would still be wrong because the mom would sometimes help out in the curtilage. That's what it's called at law, right. the fields, which is why JP2 has so much stuff about work in or near the home in the curtilage.
Right.
You can't. That is true. She could go help, but it will be the man being the boss. Like, hey, today, instead of you getting to the laundry, I need you to just make a quick meal starting later on. I need your help out in the fields. That might happen one day a week, but the man's still the boss. He still has to designate to his subordinates, hey, this is what I need today. You need to not do your normal job. You're going to have to carry the baby out in a basket to the field, right? You know, like
Right.
all the old songs are about babies in baskets out in the field. That still reflects a binary ontological bifurcated syllogism,
Right.
which proves that Thursday is wrong.
Well, there's
even if
still-
everyone were a yeoman farmer, which they're not.
Even if
Most
the man
people
is
aren't.
around the house, like even in men who work from home in modern day, there's still a division of labor, right? There's still the woman, even though they're occupying the same space throughout the day. Let's not get confused. The woman is still doing her woman's duties, and the man is still doing the man's duties. On a farm, I doubt the husbands in the olden times were sending their wives out to like herd cattle and to, I don't know, castrate a boar or whatever. The women were still in that kitchen making bread, tending to the babies. Like the division was still there even when the husband was around the homestead, so to speak. And I'm sure John Henry, to use his example, is doing that as well on his homestead. We've known guys who are homesteading right now, and they're not sending their wives out to like lasso a beast in their farm. Their wives are still just in the kitchen doing women things.
Yeah. Those are really good points. So I just hope people understand that it's just an ahistoric lie, or I don't think it's a lie. I think it's a guess that is masquerading out of Pints with Aquinas, specifically Thursday, as like a deep eureka moment. Aha! Before the Industrial Revolution, everyone was a yeoman farmer. That's just not true. So that's the first important point. Second important point is Steph's. Even if everyone were a yeoman farmer, then we still have sex expression bound up with ontology and gender expression being a made up, a commonly confused expression of opinion. Commonly, people now think that gender expression is preferential, and it's
Right.
not ontological. It's not categorical. And this is being intoned whenever you have someone say, what's really true, if we get to the true annals of history, because I know, is people closer to Jesus's day, 500 AD, 1000 AD, 1400 AD, they really all had a more, what's the term, unisex approach to marital relations. It's just not true.
No.
It's not a LARP. And in Matt's speaking part, he said something like, well, if you're listening to all this pushback started by Tim and Stephanie Gordon online, which calls a stay-at-home dad a beta male, well, you should just tune it out. He said something like that. Just tune it out. Well, I mean, yeah, you shouldn't let anyone call you a beta because you are sacrificially, as Matt pointed out, a whole bunch of right ideas mixed with wrong. You're sacrificially forced into a very uncomfortable role.
An unnatural role.
Unnatural role, which you can't possibly thrive at. You
No.
can't possibly do it half as well as your wife.
No.
But you have to. Yeah, you're not a beta for that. What was the guy's name? John? Well, I forget who the questioner was, but no, you're not a beta.
You're not a beta if you don't opt for that. Let me clarify that. If
But you
you're-
are if you are.
If you opt to stay at home as a dad and your wife is out working, 100% you're a beta. Like you're farming your wife out and you're depriving your children of the natural right to have their nurturing, loving mother. Of course, I'm sure these fathers love their kids, but you're not going to you can't replace the mother. You cannot replace the mother. The mother is unique, and the children need their mother specifically, which is why the good Lord provided your children with a female mother. They cannot be replaced. But yes, if you have the unfortunate situation that it's thrust upon you unwillingly, then yeah, you're just making do with that situation. But I think what's going on now in our society, let's just cut to the chase. What's happening is that the stay-at-home dad thing has gotten so tricky to talk about, because really what's fueling that is that women don't want to be at home. And so they're looking for any excuse to say, oh, no, I can be out working.
Right.
And my job at home is so dumb and banal and easy and unimportant that anybody can do it. Even a man can.
The exception is being used to swallow the rule and then to make everyone forget that it was an exception.
Right. It's
I'll
a
say
bad
that again.
attitude.
The exception is swallowing the rule here, and then they're giving everyone a forgetfulness pill to make you forget that it was an exception. That's what they're doing. That's why the title of the video on Pints with Aquinas was not "Stay-at-home dads in exigent circumstances are needed and can still be adequate men." That wouldn't be a catchy title for a video,
No.
but that would be an accurate one. You can still be an alpha if you're absolutely, through no choice of your own, forced into this by usually health circumstances. But by being an inadequate mother, you can still be a more than adequate father.
Just
if you
don't
have to
be
play both.
effeminate about it. If you're a
Right.
stay-at-home dad, just don't be effeminate and be like, well, am I doing it as good as a woman does? No, you're not. You will never do it as good as your wife does, being at home.
This is Book of Sirach, chapter 25, verse 22. Harsh is the slavery and great the shame when a wife financially supports her husband. I'll read that again. Harsh is the slavery and great the shame when a wife financially supports her husband. I'm adding the adverb financially here because verses 11 through 23 are all about a wife that's utterly unsupportive of her husband.
And not at home.
Horrible wife.
Yeah.
A wife that's not at home. That is, we read it all the time. It's Steph's favorite.
My favorite line in the Bible.
Like that old story about Arlene and that Steph, right? Steph loves Sirach 25. It's all about women who don't support their husband emotionally and are tyrants, and how wicked they are and how much evil they bring into their homes. So when they say support a woman who supports her husband, this means it's utterly out of context with everything else. It means financially supports. It's a slavery, and it brings great shame on the children, the woman, and the husband herself. That is Holy Writ. Of course, it's reflected in the Catechism of the Council of Trent, the duties of wives. We've read those till we're blue in the face.
so
I'm sick of
many
being a
popes.
one-note song.
We have a 38-page document about all of this stuff, all of the verses in Scripture, all of the popes, all of the scholastics, church. I mean, just everything. There's just not. These people have no ground to stand on when they talk about this stuff.
Yeah, it's 100-0. It's not 99-1.
It's a TKO.
It is an absolute knockout. It's not 51-49. Sometimes you win a debate or an argument 51-49, and you still get the win because it was really close. This is not one of those. This is 100-0 when you look into the claims that are being made. Look at Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. Mm-hmm. Look at the Bible. Look at Aristotle, really the father of the natural law. Look at things that were being written by Homer and Hesiod before Jesus' day. It's not just about supernatural expression of truth in the Old Testament or the New Testament. It's just about the natural expression of truth in the book of nature. Augustine talked about the book of Scripture and the book of nature, and both disclose the same thing. Men are leaders, women are followers. Men need to be out earning a living by day. Women need to be in the home. Now, if the man can earn his living, as so many of us now can, during and after COVID, that's great. But that still means that he is conforming to the bread earner role, and that she is still conforming to the submissive role of handmaiden, which means you rear the kids, you keep them fed, you keep them healthy, you keep them busy, you keep them quiet, while your husband, if he's earning a buck in the home, does what he has to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, cooking, cleaning, all that stuff. It's very, 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 very simple.
Well, and you just see it all over society. The effeminization of the modern suburban man is just everywhere. It's the stay-at-home dad stuff. It's like the dad's wearing the baby carriers, not the woman. Like women wear the carrier. Stop making your husband look ridiculous in public by wearing the backpack, the baby backpack, and the baby carrier. He looks ridiculous. Stop
He looks
it.
like he's been longhoused.
Yeah, it's just.
Do you want him to look like he's been longhoused?
The woman's arms are utterly free, and the husband is like laden down like a donkey with like the baby backpack and then the baby carrier. Unless you have like a congenital spine injury, ladies, you should be carrying the baby and your purse. Your husband should never, ever in any situation be carrying your purse for you. It's just that alone. Like every time I'm in society, I'm like, oh, we have so many issues. And it's just in public parading around all the time. Like the women are out of control and they are running society. And this is why we have these ridiculous notions like the stay-at-home dad. And every time you watch a Tide commercial, it's a man folding laundry and the women in the background kind of being like, oh, are you folding that laundry good enough, sir?
But things are turning around. That's the thing. Things are turning around. And in conclusion, all that you've heard us say and Matt and Noel and Thursday say are, from variant perspectives, expressions of, in varying ways, paradigmatic reticence when we're shifting things back. High ground by nightfall, as Nick Nolte says in Thin Red Line. High ground by nightfall, we're taking it back, and people, well, we're not reticent. We did start the fire. It was always turning as the world was burning. We didn't write scripture, but come on. I mean, this is a matter of fact. And I have people on here that are like, oh, you don't have to say it. Look, I took a lot of shrapnel in my backside, but also in my front side.
And in our lives, our family lives. Friends. We've lost friends. We've lost families over
small
this
circles,
issue.
Large circles. It's affected even like family members' jobs. We took behind. Do you guys really? Are you that far removed from even 2 or 3 years ago, let alone 4 years ago, when no one was talking about this? I'm talking 2019. Everyone was just talking about the newest iteration of dysphoria. You know what I'm talking about. And that's all anyone wanted to talk about. And we were saying, together with my brother, who is also on the original manuscript, we Gordons were saying the real dysphoria that's hurt everyone is not this niche thing that's being cooked up in a Hollywood lab by people that don't even like the New Testament. The real dysphoria is feminism. And, we three Gordons, I'll include Dave in this, because he was really one of the OGs. In some ways, the OG. We took a lot of shrapnel in our front side and our back side. And so we're going to say it. And it began. I announced that book on Pints with Aquinas. And then I debated Trent Horn, Matt's friend, a few months later. And Matt and Trent were both kind of like the rest of the normier listeners were like shocked. They were aghast. I can't believe the cardinal rule, the organizing principle in society under the matriarchy, under feminism, is you never say negative things about women. You're just full of all these negative comments about feminists and feminist women. And I'm like, oh, absolutely. I've got a million of these. And people were cheering to hear them. But they were like, this is crazy. This is extreme. It's not extreme. Through our various mutual associations with bigger outfits, Matt's and mine, now, particularly Noel's has really made it a project. Matt Walsh made it a project. After What is a Woman, I did a video. Matt, What is a Woman should be about feminism. It shouldn't be about...
What a woman is what I'd like to see people talking about.
Yeah.
What a woman is.
What a woman
and that's
is.
Very specific.
We've pitched this through various channels I'm friends with Knowles. I'm not friends with Walsh, but I know Knowles, he blurbed the book and he spread the book around. Jason Whitlock has the book. He's now talking about feminism. Royce White. All these people in my orbit, inner or outer, are now talking about it. Because in some ways it's easier to talk about without getting kicked off YT than the newest iteration of dysphoria. And I know that it's, even though I'm not personal close friends with Walsh, it's come down to him that, okay, what is a woman? Okay, that's cool. That's about this thing that doesn't really affect society. It's absurd. It's outrageous. It's meant to destabilize the West, cooked up by people that don't even love, Jesus or the New Testament. But it's not really important. What's really important is the original dysphoria. Make a movie about it called What a Woman Is. It could be the sequel to What is a Woman. Use the case for patriarchy. Use Ask Your Husband as your go-by. And this has been pitched to them more informally and in some ways more formally. That's what Daily Wire should get behind. I know Shapiro's not on board. Even the discussion between Knowles and Shapiro on the Barbie movie indicated something I thought I already knew. I was looking for contraindications, maybe growth in Shapiro, but Shapiro's not on board for the strong Catholic, Western civilizational, ontological divide between men and women that Knowles is doing an excellent job expressing. He's really good at it.
Well, these feminists are funny on like Noel Mering. It's like, what I just want to ask them and be like, what do you think women are special at? Like, if they can be replaced at home, where are you saying what specialness did God create us for? And I think the uncomfortability a lot of these women have is that they don't particularly like the tasks God created them for. They don't like being at home. They don't like cooking. They don't like cleaning. They don't like...
Because they weren't taught to.
They weren't taught to, or they just naturally don't like those things. So then they're just like, they give away their birthright, and they say, anybody can do that. Anybody can scrub a toilet. Anybody can be at home. And they're actually just giving away like something really beautiful about women. It's not just about scrubbing the toilet. It's the fact that mom's at home doing those menial tasks. She's there. She's there during the day. The kid scrapes a knee. She's there in the bathroom scrubbing a toilet. The husband needs something done. She's there. She's there doing whatever thing at the house. It's not about the little tasks that we're doing around the house. It's the fact that we're there, we're protected, and we're beautifying our environment, and we're at the service of our families. Whatever the stupid little task is that we're doing while we're in our houses.
But I just want to point out, it's a chicken and the egg thing. Because I mean, it's easier to just say, oh, these moderate feminists, they're annoying, particularly the Catholic ones.
Oh, they're the worst.
They're annoying.
Yeah.
But wait, it's a chicken and the egg problem. In my book, I cover the absolutely naked, politicized campaign to take out home ec from schools in the 80s by the feminists. Mering and all these other feminists that say, hey, I'm I don't know how to do these things. I'm not a good cook. They are victims of it.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's a perpetuating cycle because instead of doing the proper thing, saying this is disordered, I'm going to fight it out. I'm going to learn how to do it, which is you, right? You did this. You're like, I didn't have this model. I did not know exactly how to do home economics. I wasn't shown it. I was raised by a boomer or an old Gen Xer. I didn't know how to do it. She was a feminist. I wasn't taught it in the schools. Even though you went to public school in Texas, it was still on its way out. You had to teach yourself. Instead of doing that, this is where the victim becomes a victimizer.
Right.
They just say, oh, what I'm doing is good enough. I had the same conversation.
My husband can do the cooking. It's like, what are you teaching your daughters? Like, then we have generation after generation after generation of women who just don't know how to do anything feminine.
By the way.
It's ridiculous.
By the way, I'll stick up for myself and I guess Noel's husband here. A woman, she likened a woman not being a good cook and the man substituting for her to her hardwiring some light fixture or something. This is very trad because women were in the home by day, lots. I mean, they didn't have electricity when I'm citing, but women would have to know how to do fix-it things. Think of Scarlett O'Hara. So a woman who does fix-it things around the house, because she's there alone so many hours a day, sometimes so many days of the week, that is very traditional. And you're also very good at fix-it things.
Yeah, but
You're
I'm
half
sorry,
Mexican,
but I'm half Mexican, so that's true. But that's still, I can think, a very weak argument because rewiring a home requires a bit of technical know-how and skill. Turning on a stove and like whisking an egg.
No,
it's
I
something
agree.
that could be figured out very simply. I mean, you don't have to be like
That's a good point.
like making a beautiful crown roast or whatever, or learning how to make like a technical dish. Like,
I think you missed my point, though. I agree. Yeah, she's putting in a lot of effort to learning how to do the more technical aspects of
or
home
it's a
repair.
natural aptitude.
But
It's like,
but just think of it this way. It's more you know, if a woman, like, I'm just saying, it's one of your favorite movies ever, Gone with the Wind. Think of Scarlett O'Hara when she goes back to Tara, and she's really like, she rolls up her sleeves, and you're like, wow, this Southern belle is doing she wasn't doing manly tasks. She was doing the tasks of being a homemaker for the first time in her life, and that involved farm chores. That involved a lot of the stuff that was now in the revisionist history of trying to reclaim sex roles from the gender dysphorics. We would say these are masculine, but I'd say it's not so weird for a woman to do some work around the house that's like reparative. It is always going to be weird for the man to have to do the cooking. That's just a fact. If it's one thing if he's like a 4-star chef, men are better chefs than women. That's been a proven thing. We talk about that some in my book. But around the home, if he has to cook because she doesn't like it, then this is just him being victimized, and I guess in the first order, her being victimized by the lack of home economics being taught by school or mother. It should really be taught by mother.
I can't tell you how many feminine things I've taught myself since I've been married.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
So much stuff where I'm just like, I'm terrible at X, Y, and Z. Like, I need to up my game. I need to like watch a good, half dozen YouTube videos on this. I mean, ladies, YouTube exists, by the way. There are tutorials on how to iron a sheet or scrub a toilet or make a sandwich. Like, there are, if you are interested in becoming a better wife, there are plenty of free resources out there for you to really dive into and figure out.
Yeah, you don't have to wallow in your crapulence. It's the Simpsons.
Yeah, that's what we're dealing with in society. It's just a lot of really just crappy wives that are just like, well, what am I going to do?
Look, exception makes bad law. When people use exception to make law, it means they have paradigmatic reticence. It means they're holding on to the ancien regime of feminism in more or less ways. It's pretty simple. We can go ahead and play the exception game too. If a mother or a father is stricken ill, the mother can go to work if the father is ill. If the mother's stricken ill, the dad's going to have to be more Mr. Mom. Done. Boom. That would have been a 5-second video. That is not the same thing as writing up a confusing gender dysphoric video that says, stay-at-home dads are awesome.
Can
That
do
means
it
as a rule.
beautifully. They can do it beautifully. No, they cannot do it beautifully. They can do the best that they can do, but nobody can replace the mom.
It
And
won't
our
be
society has suffered greatly because we've tried to replace the mom in the home with grandparents, with husbands, with daycare, with this public school system.
Right.
The mom cannot be replaced, and anybody who's truly an anti-feminist needs to actually get on board with that instead of just lying to people and saying, anybody can do that job beautifully. No, they cannot. They cannot do that job beautifully. The natural mother of the children can do that job beautifully, and everybody else is doing the best that they can inadequately.
Everyone get to the South. Speaking of all this work in the curtilage and getting homesteads and things like that, go to realestateforlife.org. realestateforlife.org, and a pro-life, probably Catholic, will help you to get from your blue state to a red state, like we did. We went from the bluest of the blue, California, the reddest of the red, Mississippi, and it affected our lives drastically. Mm-hmm. It's a much better place. Go to realestateforlife.org and use the late summer to begin making plans to get out of a blue state to a red state today. You're going to need it. We have hard years coming, particularly in the run of years up to 2030. Trust me, more stuff is coming. Also, if you want to support this channel, we do need your help. We need your help. You see the good work? You see the fire, the conflagration against the feminists that we started? We talked about it backwards and frontwards all throughout the show. We are a moderate-sized channel that is feeding ideas to the bigger-sized channels. We are not just sitting around complaining about Pope Francis or whatever. Some of the other Catholic channels do this. We are idea generative. Rules for Retrogrades is important idea generative. Don't go to college. Pull your wives out of the workplace. You need to be a patriarch.
Women
America's
need to be
a
better
Catholic
wives.
country. Women be better wives. Husbands be men be better husbands. And of course, we need right-wing community organizing, subsidiarity. These are all ideas being cultivated here. We're giving them up to the bigger channels. If you help us out by donating, or whether you give to us on locals or Subscribestar, know that you are helping us to generate these real ideas that are going up to bigger channels and are being popularized from there, but they have their source here. Your dollars at locals, Subscribestar, or just straight up donations on timothyjgordon.com, which is a different natured thing, are doing real good work to recreate Christendom in the United States, the Catholic Republic. God bless you all, Steph. Take a bow. Always beautiful, always amazing, always insightful.
Thank you. And men, stop wearing the baby backpacks, please.
Day is full.
I beg of you, my Christian brothers.